Hi, and welcome back to Maya Rockstars. We are about to cover lighting. So far we've covered everything as far as using creating simple primitive shapes and creating a scene and saving it. And the only thing we haven't touched on is lighting. Now, when you look at the scene, it seems that it's already lit. We see lighting on it, but the lighting, no matter which way we turn the camera, the lighting is always kind of the same, almost this sort of this three-quarter view lighting, or actually straight on. You can see the highlights here would be where the light is, but this is really just a sort of a default view. If we hit the number 7, we'll see that there's no lights in here at all. So let's go ahead and create a light. So this section here, and I'm kind of going through just it's an overview of all these different sections here of what you can do with Maya as far as creating a scene. So we haven't gone really deep into anything. We're just kind of creating simple shapes. I mean, this is probably stuff you could have done with Stratavision back in 1995 or something. But Maya does have a lot more capabilities. But we want to start here because this is a very good place to start. Is really just the basics of creating a scene with simple objects. So let's go ahead and create a light, and we're going to create let's do a directional light first. So you notice how when you create a light, it plops it right in the middle of the scene. And if you don't see the locator, for example, if you don't see that transformation mode for the objects, you could just go ahead and hit W, and you can select it and then move that up. So so there's my light, and I'm kind of moving that in the scene. Now the light it's sort of like a sunlight. It's an infinite light that projects in one direction. So if you look at those arrows there, that is the direction that the light goes. So it's really just, and it's not necessarily starting here. It could be, that light is sort of an infinite in that direction. This is just sort of a widget showing the direction of the light. So, you could try to rotate it. So if I hit E, I can rotate and angle the light. The other thing you could do is use this locator down here. So if you click on the locator, you can go ahead and move the light around that way. So this way you can move the source and the direction of the light with these two widgets. Okay, so this is an okay lighting to start. It's not, it's not going to appear totally natural. If you want more controlled lighting, you probably want to use one of the other light source tools. So I'm going to go ahead and blow this guy away here, and let's go ahead and create a spotlight. So let's go ahead and create a light and say spotlight. Okay, so again, it plops it in the middle of the scene here. So I might want to go into my transformation mode here and pull it up. And for some reason, Maya always kind of creates these lights going in this direction, like the Z. I guess it's assuming maybe the Z is up or something, but for some reason its default is sideways, and it really should be straight down. But anyway, let's go ahead and do the same thing. We can click on that locator mode, and then we can go ahead and really point that light down. Now you notice the spotlight kind of has a circle, so it's like a circus here, and you can imagine that da 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 da, some crazy circus music. The clowns are coming around. We got the light. You can animate this around if you want. You could have multiple spotlights, but it's basically, like, it's a very simple light that projects a circle. You notice how the higher I get in the scene with this light, the bigger the cone or the light, the circle that it projects is, and that's just because the cone here is basically projecting down from that source. So that cone becomes wider as it gets further away from the objects it's projecting on. Now you can also go ahead and take that light, and if you go into the attributes here of the light, you can change the cone angle here. So you can actually just change the entire cone angle and move that around so that you have it and focus it in. So then, I have it kind of fitting on this plane here, and kind of moving that around. So, then you might want to add some secondary lights. So the other types of lights I like to use are point lights. So point lights you can add to the scene. And again, this is plopped it in the center of the screen, and you can't see it because I've got a bunch of other objects there. So I'll hit the W key, and I'll transform that out. Now this is super bright. We probably don't want it so bright. And so lights have intensity. So the intensity is what we want to drop down. They start out at 1, which is pretty bright. So we might want to start it out at like 0.1 just to add some secondary light. So you see I'm getting some secondary light along the back of that object there in the back of here, but I still have my source light. So if you think of like in photography, you have like key lights and then you have backlighting. This would be our backlighting when we added in that point light. And then sometimes you add in what's called a fill light. And, you know, a lot of times it'll be soft light or something to fill in the scene where there's not enough light at all. So if you go ahead and create a light and say, I want to do an ambient light, you'll notice that this sort of flattens, you know, it sort of flattens the whole scene out. Now this, the locator is pretty much irrelevant for an ambient light because it doesn't really, it's omnidirectional. So everything radiates out from the center there. And actually it's not even radiating out from the center the way the point light does. It looks very similar, but no matter where you put it in the scene, it's going to have the same effect. So it's basically lightening up all the objects in the scene. We never want that at a very bright level. Usually just kind of what we call the fill light. So that's to fill in areas that we feel are just totally black or just not getting enough overall light. So this will light up your scene overall. So those are all the different, well, that's not all the different lights, but these are the basic ones you can get started with. I would just play around with those first and try making a little scene here and just kind of have some fun with the lights. And then we'll get back here and rendering it.